Montana Territory, 1878. The scent of pine and sagebrush hung in the crisp autumn air as Zara Adams stepped down from the stagecoach, her gloved hand trembling slightly. Clutching her worn leather satchel, she gazed up at the weathered sign that read Riverbank Ranch, with a mixture of hope and trepidation. This remote cattle operation represented her last chance, a place where her past might not follow, where she and little Lily might start anew. "Ma'am, you must be the new cook." A ranch hand approached, eyeing her city dress, once fine navy blue calico, now faded from washing, with unconcealed curiosity. "Yes, I am," she replied, straightening her shoulders despite the exhaustion of 3 days' travel from Denver. At 22, Zara was younger than most who took such positions, but necessity had proven a harsh teacher since her husband's death 2 years prior. "Follow me then. Foreman's expecting you." The hand grabbed her trunk from the stagecoach driver and trudged toward the main house. As they crossed the yard, Zara felt eyes upon her. She glanced toward the corral where a young cowboy was dismounting a chestnut mare. For a moment, their gazes locked. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with sun-bronzed skin and hair the color of wheat beneath his Stetson. Despite the layer of trail dust on his denim and cotton shirt, there was something undeniably striking about him. Something in the way he stood, confident yet unassuming. She quickly looked away, reminding herself why she was here. A widow with a 4-year-old daughter had no business noticing handsome cowboys. She'd come to work, to earn their keep, not to court disaster. "Mama," a small voice called from the porch of the main house. Lily, her blonde curls bouncing, rushed down the steps toward her, accompanied by an older woman Zara presumed was Mrs. Thornton, the housekeeper who'd been watching Lily since their arrival that morning. Zara dropped to one knee, enveloping her daughter in an embrace. "Hello, my darling. Have you been good for Mrs. Thornton?" The little girl nodded enthusiastically. "She showed me chickens, Mama." Mrs. Thornton smiled. "She's a delightful child. Welcome to Riverbank, Mrs. Adams. I trust your journey wasn't too arduous." Before Zara could answer, boots sounded on the wooden steps. "So you're our new cook." Zara turned to find the wheat-haired cowboy standing before her, his blue eyes even more striking up close. He couldn't have been more than 24 or 25. "I'm Hank Ralston," he said, extending a calloused hand. "This is my ranch." Surprise must have shown on her face because he laughed, a warm, genuine sound. "Expecting someone older? I inherited from my father last spring." Zara took his hand briefly. "Zara Adams." "And yes, I suppose I was." Something flickered in his expression as he glanced at Lily, who was half hiding behind Zara's skirts. "And who's this little lady?" "My daughter, Lily." Zara placed a protective hand on the child's shoulder. "I hope it's no trouble. The letter mentioned accommodations for both of us." "No trouble at all. We have plenty of room." His gaze lingered on Lily a moment longer, something unreadable crossing his features. "Mrs. Thornton will show you to your quarters. Supper's at 6. The men will be hungry after bringing in the last of the herd from summer pasture." As he walked away, Zara couldn't help but wonder at the shadow that had passed across his face. There was a story there, one she wasn't sure she wanted to uncover. What Zara didn't see was how Hank Ralston stopped at the corner of the barn, watching the young widow and her daughter follow Mrs. Thornton inside. He removed his hat, running a hand through his hair as memories threatened to overwhelm him. "You all right, boss?" asked Frank, his foreman. Hank replaced his hat. "Fine. Just reminded of something, is all." "Someone, you mean," Frank replied knowingly. "She's got Emma's look about her." Hank's jaw tightened. "She's nothing like Emma. She's here to cook, that's all." But as he stalked toward the corrals, Hank couldn't deny the unease settling in his chest. A pretty widow and her daughter were dangerous complications for a man with his own buried secrets. The kitchen was well-stocked but disorganized, evidence of the ranch's 3 months without a proper cook. Zara rolled up her sleeves, grateful for the work that would occupy her mind and hands. Mrs. Thornton had shown them to a snug room off the back of the house with 2 narrow beds and a small dresser. Humble, but clean and private. "Mama, can I help?" Lily asked, perched on a stool by the work table. Zara smiled. "Of course, sweetheart. You can help me count out biscuits." As they worked, Zara tried not to think about the young rancher with the haunted eyes. There was something about Hank Ralston that unsettled her, not in a frightening way, but in a manner that made her all too aware of her precarious position. A widow with few prospects couldn't afford to be distracted, especially not by her employer. The kitchen door swung open, and Mrs. Thornton entered with a basket of eggs. Those biscuits smell divine already. The men haven't had proper baking since old Hector left. Why did the previous cook leave? Zara asked, shaping dough with practiced hands. Mrs. Thornton hesitated. Hector was getting on in years. Said his joints couldn't take Montana winters anymore. She busied herself arranging the eggs. The ranch has seen its share of changes since Mr. Ralston passed. Young Hank's done admirably, considering. How long has he been running things? Just since spring, though he's been working the ranch his whole life. His father trained him well. Mrs. Thornton lowered her voice. It hasn't been easy for him. Losing both his father and... She stopped abruptly, glancing at Lily. Well, let's just say fate's dealt him some harsh blows for one so young. Zara wanted to press further, but Mrs. Thornton had already moved on to discussing menu plans. The conversation left her with more questions than answers about her enigmatic employer. That evening, Zara served a hearty meal of beef stew, fresh biscuits, and apple pie to a tableful of appreciative cowboys. Hank sat at the head of the long table, speaking little but observing much. Several times, she felt his gaze following her as she moved between kitchen and dining room. After the meal, as the men filed out to the bunkhouse, Hank lingered. Zara was wiping down the work table while Lily dozed in a chair by the warm stove. That was the best meal this ranch has seen in a long while, he said, standing in the doorway. You've more than earned your keep already, Mrs. Adams. Thank you, Mr. Ralston. She continued her work, acutely aware of his presence. Your letter mentioned you came from Denver. Zara nodded, not looking up. Yes. After my husband died, I worked in a hotel kitchen there. What brought you all the way to Montana territory? The question was innocent enough, but Zara tensed. A fresh start seemed wise. She hoped her tone discouraged further inquiry. Hank stepped further into the kitchen. Mrs. Adams, Mama. Lily stirred, rubbing her eyes. Is it bedtime? Yes, darling. Zara was grateful for the interruption. Say good night to Mr. Ralston. The little girl slid from her chair and executed a small, sleepy curtsy that made Hank smile despite himself. Good night, Mr. Ralston. Good night, Miss Lily. His voice softened. Sweet dreams. As Zara ushered her daughter toward their room, Hank called after her. Mrs. Adams? Whatever brought you to Riverbank? I'm glad it did. The sincerity in his voice stayed with Zara long into the night, as did the questions it raised. Why would a young, handsome ranch owner take such notice of a plain cook and her daughter? And why did that notice make her heart beat faster, despite all her resolutions to keep to herself? Across the house, Hank sat alone in his father's study, a glass of whiskey untouched before him. On his desk lay a faded photograph of a young woman with a baby in her arms. A photograph he couldn't bring himself to look at directly, but couldn't bear to put away. The weeks passed, and autumn deepened toward winter. Zara found herself settling into life at Riverbank Ranch with surprising ease. The work was hard but satisfying, the people kind, and Lily thrived in the open spaces, becoming a favorite among the ranch hands who snuck her candy and taught her to whistle. Only Hank Ralston remained an enigma. Some days he was warm and attentive, lingering after meals to chat or bringing Lily little treasures from his rides, a pretty stone, a jay's feather. Other times, he was distant and brooding, disappearing for days to check on distant pastures or avoiding the main house entirely. One crisp November afternoon, Zara was hanging laundry when she heard hoofbeats approaching. Hank rode in, leading a small pony. Mr. Ralston, she acknowledged, trying to ignore the way her pulse quickened at the sight of him. The weeks of outdoor work had bronzed his skin further, and today he wore only light stubble rather than the beard most men grew as winter approached. He dismounted, leading both horses toward her. Mrs. Adams, I thought perhaps Lily might like to learn to ride. He patted the pony's neck. This is Butterscotch. She's gentle as can be and getting on in years. Perfect for a beginner. Zara stared at the docile pony. That's very kind, but I couldn't accept such a gift. Not a gift. Every child on a ranch needs to ride. His blue eyes held hers. Consider it part of your wages, if you prefer. Before she could protest further, Lily came running from the chicken coop, stopping in her tracks at the sight of the pony. Her eyes widened to saucers. Is that a pony? Hank crouched to her level. This is Butterscotch. Would you like to pet her? Lily approached cautiously, then broke into delighted giggles when the pony nudged her gently. She likes me, Mama. Watching her daughter's joy, Zara couldn't find the heart to refuse. Thank you, she said softly to Hank. This is very generous. She reminds me of someone, he said, almost to himself. Then, more clearly, I'd be happy to teach her, if you'll allow it. Over the following days, Zara watched from the kitchen window as Hank patiently guided Lily on the pony, teaching her to sit properly, to hold the reins, to give commands. There was something about seeing this strong man being so gentle with her daughter that melted a part of Zara's heart she'd thought frozen after Thomas's death. He's good with her, Mrs. Thornton observed one afternoon, catching Zara watching them. It's healing for him, I think. Healing, Zara prompted. Mrs. Thornton sighed. It's not my place to tell tales. But I will say this. Hank Ralston knows what it is to love a child and lose her mother. Before Zara could ask what she meant, Mrs. Thornton had moved on to discussing preparations for the upcoming Thanksgiving feast. But her words echoed in Zara's mind. Had Hank been married? Was there a child? If so, where were they now? That evening, after Lily was asleep, Zara found herself walking the porch, restless with questions. Snow had begun to fall, large flakes drifting lazily in the lantern light. She pulled her shawl tighter, admiring the quiet beauty of the ranch under its first winter blanket. Can't sleep? Hank's voice startled her. He stood at the far end of the porch, smoking a cigarette. Just enjoying the snow, she replied. We don't see much of it in Denver. He moved closer, offering his coat. She hesitated, then accepted it, wrapping the wool around her shoulders, still warm from his body. I wanted to thank you, she said, for being so kind to Lily. The pony lessons mean the world to her. His smile was genuine but touched with sadness. She's a quick learner. Fearless, too. Too fearless sometimes, Zara agreed. She's so much like her father that way. The words slipped out before she could stop them. She rarely spoke of Thomas. What happened to him? Your husband? Hank asked gently. Zara stared out at the falling snow. Influenza. 2 years ago this winter. She swallowed hard. It came through Denver like wildfire. Thomas was helping at the hospital. He was a carpenter, but strong enough to move patients. He didn't come home one night. By the time I found him, he was already burning with fever. Hank was quiet for a long moment. I'm sorry. That's a hard way to lose someone. All ways are hard, she said, then looked up at him. Mrs. Thornton said something today, about you knowing what it's like to lose someone. His face closed like a shuttered window. Mrs. Thornton talks too much. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have pried. Zara moved to return his coat, but he stopped her with a light touch on her arm. No, it's all right. He took a deep breath. I was married. Emma died in childbirth 3 years ago. Our daughter, Sarah, lived with my father and me until last winter when pneumonia took her. His voice was flat, as if reciting facts from a newspaper. She was just shy of her second birthday. Zara felt the breath leave her body. Oh, Hank. I'm so sorry. He looked startled at her use of his first name, then nodded acceptance. Life goes on. Has to. They stood in silence, watching the snow, united in grief, yet separated by the invisible barriers of employer and employee, man and woman, past and present. When Zara finally bid him good night, returning his coat, something had shifted between them. A door opened just a crack, letting in a sliver of light. Neither saw Frank watching from the shadows of the barn, his weathered face troubled. As Hank walked toward his quarters, the foreman stepped out. Boss, a word. Hank paused. What is it, Frank? Mrs. Adams. She seems like a fine woman, but... Frank hesitated. The men are talking. A young widow, you spending time with her child. It's causing gossip. Hank's expression hardened. Since when do I give a damn about gossip? Since you became the owner of this ranch, Frank replied evenly. Your reputation matters now, and hers too. Just be careful. That's all I'm saying. As Frank walked away, Hank stood alone in the falling snow, torn between the stirrings of new feelings and the ghosts that still haunted him, unaware that more complications awaited with the arrival of the morning stage. Thanksgiving preparations kept Zara busy in the days that followed. The snow had melted, but the air carried the promise of more to come. The ranch hands had slaughtered a turkey, and Zara was elbow-deep in bread dough when Mrs. Thornton burst into the kitchen. The stage is coming, the older woman announced, wiping her hands on her apron. And it's carrying trouble, if I ever saw it. Zara looked up, confused. Trouble? What do you mean? Hank's brother-in-law, Victor Lambert. City man from back east, Boston or some such place. Mrs. Thornton lowered her voice. He's Emma's brother, and he's never approved of Hank. Thinks his sister married beneath her. Before Zara could respond, the kitchen door opened again, this time admitting Lily, who had been collecting eggs. Mama, there's a fancy carriage coming, with a man in a tall hat. Curiosity got the better of Zara. She wiped her hands and moved to the window. A sleek black carriage had indeed pulled up, and a man in an expensive overcoat and top hat was descending, his posture rigid with disapproval as he surveyed the ranch. Hank emerged from the barn, and even from a distance, Zara could see the tension in his stance as he greeted the visitor. Words were exchanged, too far away to hear, but the rigid body language of both men spoke volumes. Why is Mr. Lambert visiting? Zara asked, returning to her dough. Mrs. Thornton shrugged. No good reason, I'm sure. He comes every few months, poking his nose into the ranch finances, questioning Hank's decisions. Ever since little Sarah passed, he's been worse. Acts like Hank somehow failed Emma and the child. Zara felt a surge of protectiveness toward Hank. From what she'd observed, he was a fair and hard-working man who carried his grief privately but deeply. The idea that anyone would question his character seemed unjust. Her thoughts were interrupted when the kitchen door swung open, and Hank entered with the visitor. Victor Lambert was tall and thin, with carefully groomed dark hair and a meticulously waxed mustache. His expensive clothes seemed absurdly out of place in the ranch kitchen. Mrs. Adams, this is Mr. Lambert. He'll be staying through Thanksgiving, Hank said, his voice carefully neutral. Victor, this is our cook, Mrs. Adams, and her daughter, Lily. Victor Lambert surveyed Zara with undisguised assessment. Charmed, I'm sure. His tone suggested he was anything but. His gaze lingered on Lily, who was peeking out from behind her mother's skirts. Quite young to be a widow, aren't you, Mrs. Adams? Victor, Hank warned. Death doesn't discriminate by age, Mr. Lambert, Zara replied evenly. Will you be joining us for supper? Something like approval flickered in Hank's eyes at her composed response. Victor merely nodded curtly before turning back to his brother-in-law. We have business to discuss, Ralston. Privately. After they departed, Mrs. Thornton clicked her tongue. That man, always looking down his nose at honest folk. What business could he have with Mr. Ralston? Zara asked, trying to sound merely curious. Emma's family put money into the ranch when she and Hank married, Mrs. Thornton explained. Now Lambert acts like he has a say in everything. Between you and me, I think he wants Hank to sell up and move east, or at least sell him the Lambert share at a loss. The information troubled Zara as she worked through the afternoon. The ranch clearly meant everything to Hank. It was his heritage, his livelihood, and his connection to his father and daughter. The idea that he might lose any part of it seemed profoundly unjust. That evening, Lambert dominated the dinner conversation with tales of Boston society and thinly veiled criticisms of Montana territory. Several times, Zara noticed Hank's jaw tightening, his knuckles white around his fork, but he maintained his composure. It was only when Lambert began extolling the virtues of Eastern finishing schools that Hank finally spoke up. Not everyone measures success by how well they can pour tea. Victor. Lambert's smile was razor thin. Of course not. Some measure it in cattle and acres, at least until the next bad winter or market crash. He turned to Zara. Wouldn't you agree, Mrs. Adams, that a child should receive the best education possible? Your charming daughter, for instance, surely you wouldn't want her future limited by frontier schooling. Zara felt all eyes turned to her. I believe education is important, she said carefully, but I also believe there are many kinds of valuable learning. Lily is gaining knowledge here she couldn't get in a city. Lambert's eyebrows rose. How progressive of you. After dinner, as Zara was clearing dishes, she overheard raised voices from Hank's study. Though she couldn't make out the words, the tone was unmistakably confrontational. She hurried Lily to their room, unwilling to let her daughter witness any unpleasantness. Later, unable to sleep, Zara slipped out to the kitchen for some warm milk. As she passed the study, she noticed the door ajar, lamplight spilling into the hallway. Hank sat at his desk, head in his hands, an open ledger before him. She hesitated, then knocked softly. He looked up, his expression clearing slightly when he saw her. "I'm sorry to disturb you," she said. "I was just making some warm milk. Would you like some?" He nodded, gesturing for her to enter. "That would be welcome." When she returned with 2 steaming mugs, she found him staring at the photograph she'd glimpsed before, a young woman with a baby. "Emma and Sarah," he said, answering her unasked question. He accepted the mug with a grateful nod. Victor's right about one thing. Emma would have wanted Sarah to have the best of everything. Education, opportunities, culture. "You would have given her those things," Zara said with certainty. Hank smiled sadly. "In my way, yes. But not in the way the Lamberts define best." He sighed, closing the ledger. "Victor wants to buy me out. Says I'm not running the ranch profitably enough to justify his family's investment. Are you considering it?" Zara asked, trying to keep her voice neutral despite the sudden tightness in her chest. "This land has been in my family for 3 generations. My father worked himself to death for it." His voice hardened. "No, I'm not selling. But Victor can make things difficult if he chooses." Zara hesitated, then ventured. "How?" "Call in loans. Force a partition. Legal matters I don't fully understand, but that would cost money I don't have to fight." He ran a hand through his hair. "I'm sorry. You didn't come in here to listen to my troubles." "I don't mind," she said softly. "Sometimes sharing a burden makes it lighter." Their eyes met over the rims of their mugs, and for a moment, something electric passed between them. Understanding, connection, possibility. Then Hank looked away. "Thank you for the milk, Mrs. Adams. And the company." It was a dismissal, gentle but clear. Zara nodded and rose to leave. At the door, she turned back. "For what it's worth, Mr. Ralston, I think you honor Emma and Sarah best by keeping this ranch exactly as you believe it should be." His grateful smile followed her down the hallway, warming her more than any milk could have done. What neither of them knew was that Victor Lambert had witnessed their late-night conversation from the shadows of the hallway, his calculating mind already spinning this development into his plans. Thanksgiving Day dawned clear and cold. Zara had been up since before sunrise, preparing the feast with Mrs. Thornton's help. The dining room table had been extended to accommodate all the ranch hands, and the atmosphere was festive despite Victor Lambert's continuing presence. Lily had been especially excited, helping to decorate the table with pine cones and dried berries. Now she was outside with several of the younger hands who were organizing impromptu games before the meal. Zara was just removing the turkey from the oven when Victor Lambert entered the kitchen, looking incongruous in his fine suit among the pots and pans. "Mrs. Adams," he greeted her, his smile not reaching his eyes. "Quite a spread you're preparing." "Thank you, Mr. Lambert." She continued her work, hoping he would leave. Instead, he moved closer, speaking in a lowered voice. "I couldn't help but notice you've become friendly with Ralston." Zara stiffened. "Mr. Ralston is my employer. We have a cordial professional relationship." "Of course." His smile turned knowing. Though late-night meetings in his study suggest something perhaps more than professional. Her cheeks burned, but she kept her composure. "I brought Mr. Ralston some warm milk when I was making some for myself. There was nothing improper about our conversation." "I meant no offense," he said, though his tone suggested otherwise. "In fact, I find it admirable that a young widow would seek to secure her future. Ralston is, after all, an eligible match despite his rustic circumstances." Zara set down the carving knife with deliberate care. "Mr. Lambert, whatever you're implying." "I'm implying nothing," he interrupted smoothly. "Merely observing that a woman in your position might be interested to know that Ralston's financial situation is more precarious than he lets on. His stubborn refusal to modernize this operation means it's only a matter of time before he loses everything." Lambert straightened his cuffs. "When that happens, I doubt he'll be in a position to employ a cook, let alone support a new family." Before Zara could respond, the back door flew open and Lily burst in, her cheeks flushed with cold and excitement. "Mama, Mr. Hank is teaching everyone to throw horseshoes, and I got one on the post." Lambert's expression shifted to one of practiced charm. "How delightful, child. Your mother and I were just discussing your future." Lily looked between them, her smile faltering at the tension in the room. Zara quickly moved to her daughter's side. "That's wonderful, darling. Why don't you go tell Mrs. Thornton? I think she's in the dining room." After Lily had gone, Zara faced Lambert squarely. "Mr. Lambert, I don't know what you hope to accomplish, but let me be clear. I came to Riverbank for honest work, nothing more. Your insinuations are both incorrect and unwelcome. My apologies if I've misread the situation. He didn't sound apologetic at all. I merely thought to save you disappointment. Ralston has a habit of taking in strays. It's a family weakness. But don't mistake kindness for intentions. With that parting shot, he left the kitchen, leaving Zara shaken and angry. The idea that anyone would view her friendship with Hank as some kind of fortune-hunting scheme was deeply offensive. Yet beneath her indignation lay a more troubling question. What if Lambert was right about Hank's financial troubles? Could the ranch truly be in jeopardy? The Thanksgiving meal itself was a strained affair. Though the food was plentiful and the ranch hands boisterous, there was an undercurrent of tension at the head of the table. Hank was quieter than usual, Victor more smug, and Zara found herself unable to meet Hank's eyes, Lambert's insinuations still ringing in her ears. Only Lily seemed immune to the undercurrents, chattering happily to anyone who would listen about her horseshoe triumph and her growing skill with butterscotch. When she spontaneously climbed onto Hank's lap to show him a drawing she'd made of the pony, Zara saw Victor's eyes narrow calculatingly. After the meal, as the men gathered on the porch to smoke, Zara overheard Victor addressing the foreman. "Frank, isn't it? Tell me, what do you make of Ralston hiring such a young and attractive cook? Quite a change from old Hector, I understand." Frank's reply was measured. "Mrs. Adams is a fine cook and a hard-working woman. The boss hired her on her merits." Of course, of course." Victor's tone was patronizing, though one wonders if Ralston's judgment might be clouded by other considerations. Zara slipped away, cheeks burning. Lambert was deliberately sowing seeds of gossip and doubt. But to what end? What could he possibly gain by undermining her position or her relationship with Hank? The answer came to her later that evening when, passing by the study again, she heard raised voices. Unable to resist, she paused just out of sight. "Your attachment to the child is clouding your judgment," Victor was saying. Again. First Sarah, now this little girl. "You're making the same mistakes, Hank. Leave Lily out of this." Hank's voice was dangerously quiet. "And don't you dare bring Sarah into this discussion. I'm merely pointing out a pattern. You get attached, make emotional decisions rather than practical ones. It's why this ranch is failing." "The ranch isn't failing. We had one bad season that's left you unable to repay the Lambert investment on schedule," Victor cut in. "Face facts, Ralston. You're playing house with a pretty widow and her child while your inheritance crumbles around you." There was a crash, perhaps a glass being slammed down. "Get out," Hank growled. "Tomorrow morning, you're on the first stage back to Helena." "Fine, but this isn't over. My family wants their investment back, one way or another." Victor's voice turned sly. "Though I wonder what your new lady friend will think when she learns you're practically bankrupt. Women like that have a keen sense for security, you know." "Women like what?" Hank demanded. "Come now. A beautiful young widow, conveniently appearing right when you're at your most vulnerable? Seeking employment far from anywhere she's known? You don't find that suspicious?" Zara had heard enough. Heart pounding, she retreated silently to the kitchen. Lambert's strategy was now clear. He was trying to drive a wedge between her and Hank, to isolate him, perhaps make him more likely to sell the ranch out of desperation or disillusionment. The question was, would Hank believe his insinuations? And more troublingly, was there any truth to Lambert's claims about the ranch's finances? If Riverbank truly was in danger, what would that mean for her and Lily's future here? She was still pondering these questions when Hank found her in the kitchen. His face was grim, his shoulders tense. "Mrs. Adams, Zara, I need to speak with you." Zara steeled herself, wiping her hands on her apron. "Of course, Mr. Ralston." Hank closed the kitchen door behind him, his expression unreadable. "I owe you an apology." This was not what she'd expected. An apology? For what? "Victor Lambert is leaving tomorrow. I've asked him to go." Hank ran a hand through his hair. "He's made insinuations about you that are completely unacceptable." Relief washed through her. "Then you don't believe him?" "Believe him?" Hank looked genuinely puzzled. "About what?" Zara hesitated, then decided honesty was best. "I overheard part of your conversation. He suggested I might have ulterior motives for coming to Riverbank." Understanding dawned on his face, followed by anger. "No, I don't believe that for a moment." He moved closer. "But I need to be honest with you about something. The ranch is facing some financial difficulties. Nothing insurmountable, but enough that I might need to make some changes in the coming months. Are our positions in jeopardy, mine and Mrs. Thornton's? No, he said firmly. You're both essential, but I may need to reduce the number of hands after the spring drive, and certain improvements I'd planned might need to wait. Zara nodded, relieved but still troubled. Mr. Lambert seemed quite determined about reclaiming his family's investment. Victor has always believed the ranch should be sold to the highest bidder. Emma's death only strengthened his conviction. Hank's expression softened. But this land isn't just property to me, Zara. It's my heritage, my daughter's legacy, my future. The quiet intensity in his voice stirred something in her. I understand. Truly. Their eyes held for a long moment. Then Hank took a step back, as if remembering himself. I should let you finish here. Thank you for the magnificent dinner. The men were singing your praises. It was my pleasure. She hesitated, then added, if there's anything I can do to help with the ranch's situation. He smiled, a genuine smile that transformed his face. Just keeping everyone well-fed is help enough. Good night, Zara. After he left, Zara found herself standing in the quiet kitchen, her thoughts in turmoil. Despite his reassurances, she couldn't shake the worry that Lambert's maneuverings threatened not just Hank's ownership of the ranch, but her and Lily's newfound security as well. What she didn't know was that Hank Ralston was having similar thoughts in his own quarters, staring at the ceiling as he considered options he'd previously refused to contemplate. The next morning, when Victor Lambert departed on the early stage, Hank rode out with Frank to the north pasture, returning with a determined set to his jaw. December arrived with a fierce blizzard that isolated Riverbank Ranch for nearly a week. Confined indoors, the ranch's inhabitants fell into new patterns. The hands spent hours in the bunkhouse playing cards and telling tales. Mrs. Thornton taught Lily to knit, delighted to have a pupil for her forgotten skills. And Zara found herself spending more evenings in Hank's study, initially helping him organize the ranch's accounts, but increasingly just talking. They spoke of books they'd read, places they'd seen, dreams they'd harbored before life intervened. With each conversation, the line between employer and employee blurred further, their friendship deepening into something neither was ready to name. Did you always want to be a rancher? Zara asked one evening as they sat before the fire, the wind howling outside. Hank smiled. Always. Even when my father sent me to school in Helena, all I could think about was getting back to Riverbank. He passed her a cup of coffee. What about you? Did you dream of becoming a cook on a remote Montana ranch? She laughed. Not exactly. I wanted to be a teacher, actually. I had almost completed my training when I met Thomas. Her smile turned wistful. Life has a way of rearranging our plans. Do you regret it? Giving up teaching? No. Her answer was immediate. I gained Lily. Nothing compares to that. She sipped her coffee. But sometimes I miss books, learning, the excitement of seeing a child understand something new. You could still teach, Hank suggested. Lily will need schooling soon, and there are other children at neighboring ranches. The closest school is 20 miles away. The idea took root in her mind. A small school at Riverbank, perhaps in the unused storage room off the main house. It was a lovely dream, but one that depended entirely on her remaining at the ranch, on Hank keeping the property, on a future that felt increasingly uncertain despite their growing closeness. As the winter deepened, so did the bond between Hank and Lily. The little girl followed him around whenever possible, helping with small chores, asking endless questions about the ranch, the animals, the land. He answered with infinite patience, teaching her as he would have taught his own daughter. Zara watched their attachment grow with a mixture of joy and apprehension. Joy because Lily had never known her father, and Hank's kind male presence filled a void in her life. Apprehension because hearts, especially children's hearts, were so easily broken, and nothing about their situation felt permanent despite Hank's assurances. Christmas approached, bringing with it a festive mood despite the harsh weather. The hands cut a pine tree from the nearby forest, setting it up in the main house's parlor. Everyone contributed to the decorations: popcorn strings, paper cutouts, small whittled figures. Lily was beside herself with excitement, especially when Hank showed her how to make ornaments from pine cones and ribbon. He's good for her, Mrs. Thornton observed one afternoon as they watched Hank lift Lily to place a star atop the tree. And she's good for him. I haven't seen him smile so much since before Sarah passed. I worry about her becoming too attached, Zara admitted. Mrs. Thornton gave her a knowing look. Only her attachment you're worried about. Zara felt her cheeks warm. He's my employer, Mrs. Thornton. And I'm the Queen of England. The older woman patted her arm. Just be careful with both your hearts, dear. There's healing happening here, for all three of you. But healing can be a delicate process. On Christmas Eve, after a simple but joyful dinner, Hank surprised everyone by producing small gifts: new gloves for the hands, a shawl for Mrs. Thornton, a beautifully illustrated book of fairy tales for Lily, and for Zara, a delicate silver locket. It was my mother's, he explained quietly as he handed it to her. I thought, well, you should have something nice. Zara was speechless, holding the precious heirloom in trembling fingers. Hank, I can't accept this. It should go to your future wife. Or, please, he interrupted. I want you to have it. The significance of the gift, a family heirloom, something personal rather than practical, was lost on no one. The hands exchanged knowing glances. Mrs. Thornton beamed, and Lily, watching wide-eyed as Hank fastened the chain around her mother's neck, seemed to come to her own conclusions. That night, as Zara tucked her daughter into bed, Lily asked the question that had been forming in her young mind. Mama, do you love Mr. Hank? Zara nearly dropped the hairbrush she was holding. What makes you ask that, darling? Because he looks at you the way Prince Charming looks at Cinderella in my book. Lily's expression was earnest. And he gave you his mama's necklace. And you smile different when he's here. Out of the mouths of babes. Zara sat on the edge of the bed, struggling to find the right words. Mr. Hank is a kind man. And yes, I care for him very much. But love is complicated. I love him, Lily declared with the simple certainty of childhood. He's better than the papas in my books. Zara smoothed her daughter's hair, her heart aching. He is a very good man. But darling, remember that Mr. Hank is our employer. Our situation here, it might not be forever. Why not? Lily's brow furrowed. Don't you like it here? I do. Very much. But sometimes grown-up matters are complicated. Lily considered this, then yawned. I think you should marry Mr. Hank. Then we could stay forever. With that simple solution offered, the child drifted off to sleep, leaving Zara to contemplate the dangerous wish taking shape in her own heart, a wish remarkably similar to her daughter's. Christmas Day dawned clear and bright, the sun turning the snow-covered landscape into a dazzling expanse of white. The celebrations continued with a grand dinner, music from a fiddle-playing ranch hand, and stories shared around the fire. It was during this peaceful moment, with everyone gathered in the parlor, that the sound of approaching horses broke the holiday tranquility. Frank went to investigate, returning with a grim expression. It's Lambert, he announced. With a lawyer. And papers. The joyful atmosphere evaporated instantly. Hank rose, his face hardening. Take Lily to the kitchen, he told Zara quietly. This won't be pleasant. As she led her confused daughter away, Zara felt a sense of foreboding. Victor Lambert would not have traveled through winter conditions on Christmas Day unless he believed victory was within his grasp. Whatever was about to unfold would determine not just Hank's future, but hers and Lily's as well. The kitchen was warm and smelled of cinnamon and pine, but Zara could feel the tension seeping under the door from the main house. Lily sensed it too, becoming unusually quiet as she helped arrange leftover cookies on a plate. Why is that man back, Mama? She asked finally. Mr. Hank doesn't like him. Mr. Lambert has business with Mr. Hank, Zara replied, trying to keep her tone neutral. Grown-up business about the ranch. Is he going to make us leave? Lily's voice trembled. Zara knelt before her daughter, gripping her small shoulders. No one is making us leave, darling. Not today. Not today, but perhaps tomorrow or the next day, depending on what transpired in that meeting. Zara pushed the thought aside, focusing on keeping Lily calm and occupied. She was just starting a game of checkers when Mrs. Thornton slipped into the kitchen, her usually composed face tight with worry. What's happening? Zara asked in a low voice, moving away from Lily. That snake Lambert has brought legal papers claiming the ranch is in default on loans from the Lambert family, Mrs. Thornton whispered. He's demanding immediate repayment or ownership transfer of the north section, the best grazing land. Zara felt sick. Can he do that? The lawyer seems to think so. Hank is. Well, he's keeping his composure, but barely. Mrs. Thornton glanced toward Lily. That child is the only reason he hasn't thrown them both bodily from the property. The implications were clear. If Lambert succeeded in taking the north pasture, Riverbank would struggle to maintain even half its current herd. The financial difficulties Hank had mentioned would become insurmountable. Staff would be cut, the ranch might be sold in pieces, and their newfound home would disappear. There must be something we can do, Zara murmured. Mrs. Thornton shook her head. Unless you have a fortune hidden in that apron pocket, I don't see how. The amount Lambert is demanding would take years to repay, even in good seasons. A commotion from the main house silenced their conversation. Raised voices, a door slamming, then boots on the porch steps. Through the window, Zara saw Hank striding toward the barn, his shoulders rigid with fury. Victor Lambert stood on the porch, a satisfied smile on his thin face as he watched Hank retreat. Stay with Lily, Zara told Mrs. Thornton, making a swift decision. She grabbed her shawl and slipped out the back door before the older woman could protest. The snow crunched beneath her boots as she hurried toward the barn. Inside, the air was warm and hay-scented, filled with the soft sounds of horses shuffling in their stalls. She found Hank in the tack room, methodically saddling his horse, his movements controlled but vibrating with anger. Don't try to stop me, he said without turning. I'm riding to Helena. There has to be someone there who can help. A banker, another lawyer, someone. Helena is 2 days' ride in good weather, Zara pointed out. And there's snow forecast for tomorrow. I don't have a choice. He tightened the cinch with more force than necessary. Lambert's given me 3 days to either pay or sign over the north pasture. If I don't reach Helena and back, I lose everything my father built. Let me help, she said, stepping closer. Now he did turn, his blue eyes fierce. How? This isn't about cooking or keeping accounts, Zara. Lambert is demanding $5,000. Money I don't have, can't borrow, and can't earn in 3 days. But riding out in winter conditions, alone? It's too dangerous. What would you have me do? His voice cracked slightly. Surrender? Watch Lambert dismantle my family's legacy piece by piece. I can't do that. I won't. The desperation in his voice tore at her heart. She reached out, touching his arm. At least wait until morning. The passes will be clearer, and you can think more clearly after rest. For a moment, she thought he would refuse. Then his shoulders slumped, the fight draining out of him. Maybe you're right. Come back to the house, she urged gently. It's Christmas. Let's not let Lambert ruin it entirely. He allowed her to lead him from the barn, though his expression remained troubled. As they approached the main house, Zara was alarmed to see Lily standing on the porch with Lambert, the man bending to speak to her with exaggerated kindness. Hank quickened his pace. Lily, he called. Come here, sweetheart. The little girl looked up, her face brightening at the sight of him. She started toward them, but Lambert placed a hand on her shoulder, delaying her. What a charming child, he said, his voice carrying in the clear air. So trusting and affectionate. Children are remarkably adaptable, don't you think, Ralston? They form new attachments so easily. His smile was serpentine. I'm sure she'll adjust quickly when you're forced to let her mother go. It was a deliberately cruel barb, designed to wound, and it found its mark. Hank's face darkened, his hands clenching into fists. Before he could respond, however, Lily squirmed away from Lambert's grip and ran to Hank, throwing her arms around his legs. Mr. Hank, she cried, burying her face against him. I don't like that man. He said mean things about you. Hank lifted her into his arms, his anger visibly receding as he focused on comforting the child. It's all right, sweetheart. He's leaving soon. Don't let him make us go away, Lily pleaded, her small hands gripping his coat. I'll do everything I can, Hank promised, his voice thick with emotion. Everything. Zara felt something shift in that moment, watching Hank hold her daughter with such protective tenderness. This was no longer just about the ranch or their employment. It was about family, the one they had begun to create together, unknowingly, over these past months. Lambert observed the scene with calculating eyes. How touching. Though I wonder, Ralston, if you've considered that this attachment might be precisely what Mrs. Adams has been cultivating? A widow with a child, finding a prosperous ranch owner. Quite a fortuitous arrangement. Hank's expression hardened. That's enough, Victor. You've said your piece. Now get off my property until the agreed meeting time. As you wish. Lambert adjusted his gloves with deliberate nonchalance. though I suggest you start packing. We both know you can't meet the terms." After Lambert and his lawyer had departed, the Christmas celebrations resumed, but with a subdued quality. The Hands, aware that something serious was afoot, were quieter. Mrs. Thornton fussed more than usual, and Hank, though he made an effort for Lily's sake, was clearly preoccupied, his gaze often drifting to the window, as if seeking answers in the snow-covered landscape. That night, after Lily had finally fallen asleep, Zara found herself once again drawn to Hank's study. The door was ajar, lamplight spilling into the hallway. She knocked softly. "Come in," he called, his voice weary. He sat at his desk, ledgers open before him, a half-empty whiskey glass at his elbow. He looked up as she entered, a small smile softening his features. "Can't sleep? Too much on my mind." She hesitated, then took the chair across from him. "Have you found a solution?" He shook his head. "Short of a miracle, no? I've gone through every account, every possibility. Even if I sold half the herd, it wouldn't be enough. And without that land, what if?" Zara took a deep breath. "What if I could help?" Hank looked at her skeptically. "I appreciate the offer, but unless you're secretly an heiress." "No, but I do have something of value." She reached into her pocket, withdrawing a small velvet pouch. "My husband's family had this. It was meant to be Lily's someday, but—" She opened the pouch, tipping its contents onto the desk. A diamond ring gleamed in the lamplight, its stone modest but of good quality. Hank stared at it, then at her. "Zara, no. I can't take this." "It's not a gift," she said firmly. "It's an investment. In the ranch, in our future here." She pushed the ring toward him. "It won't cover everything Lambert is demanding, but it might be enough to negotiate with, to buy time." He made no move to take it. "This is your daughter's inheritance. A secure home, people who care for her, a place to grow up loved and safe. That's her real inheritance." Zara's voice was steady despite the emotion behind her words. "This is just a thing. What you've given us here is worth far more." Their eyes held across the desk, the unspoken feelings between them filling the silence. Finally, Hank reached out, but instead of taking the ring, he covered her hand with his. "I can't accept this sacrifice," he said softly, "but it makes me certain of what I need to do. Which is—" He squeezed her hand. "Get some sleep, Zara. Tomorrow will be soon enough to discuss it." She returned to her room with a troubled heart, sensing that Hank had reached some decision, one he wasn't ready to share. As she slipped into bed beside her sleeping daughter, she couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change, for better or worse. What she didn't know was that Hank spent the remainder of the night writing letters, one to his lawyer in Helena, one to a banker in Bozeman, and one that he sealed and placed in his desk drawer, addressed simply to Zara. The next morning, Zara awoke to find Hank already gone, having ridden out before dawn. Frank informed her that the boss had business in the neighboring town and would return by nightfall. The day passed in tense anticipation, with everyone on the ranch feeling the weight of uncertainty. Lily was especially sensitive to the mood, becoming clingy and fretful. "When is Mr. Hank coming back?" she asked repeatedly. "Soon, darling," Zara assured her, though her own anxiety grew as the short winter day began to fade with no sign of Hank. It was nearly supper time when they finally heard hoofbeats in the yard. Zara hurried to the window, relief washing through her at the sight of Hank dismounting, stamping snow from his boots before climbing the porch steps. He looked exhausted but determined as he entered the house, snow dusting his coat and hat. Lily ran to him immediately, and his face softened as he swung her into his arms. "Did you bring me a present?" she asked hopefully. Hank chuckled. "Not today, sweetheart, but I did bring good news." His eyes found Zara over Lily's head. News that can't wait. After Lily had been settled with Mrs. Thornton, Hank led Zara to his study, closing the door behind them. He removed his coat, revealing a packet of papers tucked into his shirt pocket. "I've spent the day with a lawyer in Grantsville," he explained, placing the papers on his desk. Drawing up these, Zara looked at the documents, confusion furrowing her brow. "What are they?" "A solution. Not the one I'd planned, but perhaps the right one nonetheless." He took a deep breath. "I'm forming a corporation, Riverbank Ranch Company. I'm selling shares to raise the capital to pay off Lambert." "Who would buy shares in the ranch?" Zara asked, trying to understand the legal terminology in the documents. "Several neighboring ranchers have agreed to invest." They're tired of Lambert's attempts to buy up land and consolidate holdings. They see him as a threat to all independent operators. Hank ran a hand through his hair. It means I'll no longer own Riverbank outright. I'll be the majority shareholder, but not the sole owner. Zara nodded slowly. But the ranch will survive, and Lambert will be stopped. Yes, though there's one more aspect to the arrangement. He hesitated. The investors insisted on certain conditions to ensure the ranch's continued success. One of them is that I take on a partner, someone with a personal stake in Riverbank's future. A partner. Zara felt a twinge of apprehension. Who? Hank's gaze was steady, intense. You. She stared at him, certain she'd misheard. Me? But I don't have any money to invest, any experience running a ranch. That's not the kind of partnership they're suggesting. He moved closer, taking her hands in his. Zara, these past months with you and Lily have been the happiest I've known since I lost Emma and Sarah. You've brought life back to this place, and to me. Her heart began to race as she realized what he was saying. Hank, I know it's sudden. I know there are 100 reasons to say this is too soon, too complicated. His voice was urgent, sincere. But I love you, Zara. And I love Lily as if she were my own. I want us to be a family, not just for the ranch's sake, but for ours. Tears filled her eyes. Are you asking me to marry you? Yes. He squeezed her hands. Not just as a business arrangement, though that's how it will appear to Lambert, but because I want to wake up beside you every morning, watch Lily grow up, perhaps have more children together. I want to build a life with you. Joy and doubt warred within her. The investors, they're requiring this. My becoming your wife. They suggested it as a way to secure the ranch's future. Frank may have mentioned our growing closeness. A flush colored his cheeks. But I would have asked eventually, Zara. Maybe not today, but soon. This situation just forced my hand. She pulled her hands from his, needing space to think. What if I say no? Then I'll find another solution. His expression was solemn. I would never use the ranch as leverage to force your hand in marriage. If you don't share my feelings or aren't ready, I'll understand. Zara turned away, her thoughts in turmoil. She did love him, had fallen in love gradually over these months of shared meals, quiet conversations, and watching his tenderness with Lily. But marriage was a profound commitment, one she had not expected to make again so soon after losing Thomas. And yet, the thought of leaving Riverbank, of taking Lily away from the place and people she had come to love, was unbearable. The thought of never seeing Hank again, of wondering what might have been, was worse still. Lily asked me the other night if I loved you, she said finally, turning back to face him. She said you look at me the way Prince Charming looks at Cinderella in her storybook. A smile touched his lips. Smart girl. She also said you're better than the papas in her books. Zara took a step toward him. She was right about that too. Hope kindled in his eyes. Is that a yes? It's a yes, she whispered. Not for the ranch, or the investors, but for us. Because I love you too. He closed the distance between them, gathering her into his arms. Their first kiss was tentative, then deepening with the release of months of restrained feelings. When they finally parted, both were breathless. When? She asked. When would we marry? As soon as possible. Lambert returns the day after tomorrow for his answer. Hank's expression turned serious. The minister could come tomorrow. It would be small, just the ranch hands and Mrs. Thornton as witnesses. We could have a proper celebration in the spring. Zara nodded, still dazed by the swiftness of events. Should we tell Lily tonight? Yes. His face softened. I want her to know this is real, that I'm not just becoming her mother's husband, but her father too, if she'll have me. They found Lily in the kitchen, helping Mrs. Thornton roll out dough for the next day's breakfast. The little girl looked up as they entered, her expression brightening at their linked hands. Lily, sweetheart, Zara began, kneeling to her daughter's level. Mr. Hank and I have something important to tell you. Lily looked between them expectantly. Hank crouched down beside Zara. Lily, I've asked your mother to marry me, and she said yes. That means we'll all live here together, and if you want, I'd be honored to be your father. The child's eyes widened, and for a heart-stopping moment, Zara feared she might reject the idea. Then Lily launched herself at Hank with a joyful cry, wrapping her small arms around his neck. I knew it, she exclaimed. I asked Santa for a papa for Christmas, and he brought you. Hank's eyes glistened as he hugged the little girl tightly. Over Lily's head, His gaze met Zara's, a look of such profound happiness that it brought fresh tears to her eyes. Mrs. Thornton discreetly wiped her own eyes with her apron. "Well now, this calls for a celebration. I believe there's still some of that spice cider left." As the news spread through the ranch, congratulations poured in. The Hands were genuinely delighted, Frank especially so. "About time," he told Hank, clapping him on the shoulder. Never seen two people more meant for each other. Plans for the next day unfolded quickly. The minister was summoned from Grantsville. Mrs. Thornton and several of the Hands' wives began preparations for a modest wedding feast. One of the Hands rode to the nearest town to purchase a simple gold band. Zara fell asleep that night with Lily curled against her, her mind awhirl with the day's developments. From widow to bride in the span of hours, it seemed impossible, yet utterly right. Her last thought before drifting off was that Thomas would approve. He had always wanted her happiness above all else. The wedding took place the following afternoon in the ranch's parlor, decorated with winter greenery and candles. Zara wore her best dress, a deep blue with lace at the collar and cuffs, and carried a small bouquet of pine and dried berries that Lily had helped arrange. Hank stood tall and handsome in a new shirt and his best coat, his face alight with joy as she walked toward him on Frank's arm. The ceremony was brief but heartfelt. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Hank's kiss was gentle, reverent. Then he lifted Lily into his arms, including her in their embrace, making them truly a family. The celebration that followed was boisterous and warm, with music and dancing lasting well into the evening. As darkness fell, Hank drew Zara outside onto the porch, where they could see the stars emerging in the clear winter sky. "Mrs. Ralston," he said, the name sounding like music on his lips. "Are you happy?" "Completely." She leaned into his embrace. "Though I can't help wondering what Lambert will say tomorrow when he discovers his leverage is gone." Hank chuckled. "I'm almost looking forward to it." Almost. They stood in comfortable silence, watching their breath cloud in the cold air. Then Lily's voice called from inside. "Mama? Papa? Where are you?" They turned to see her in the doorway, her small face searching for them. It was the first time she had called Hank Papa, and the effect on him was immediate. His eyes filled, and he swallowed hard before answering. "Right here, sweetheart. Mama and Papa are right here." As Lily ran to them, Zara realized that the title of their story had come true. The widow had indeed worked as a ranch cook until the cowboy's daughter called her Mama, though in this case, it was a different daughter than either of them had expected. Life's most precious gifts, she reflected as Hank lifted Lily into his arms, often arrived in unexpected packages. Spring came to Riverbank Ranch in a riot of green, the land awakening from its winter slumber. The pastures filled with new calves, the garden Mrs. Thornton and Lily had planted began to sprout, and the rhythm of ranch life shifted to match the season's demands. Victor Lambert's reaction to the news of Hank's marriage and the formation of the Riverbank Ranch Company had been everything they'd anticipated: outrage, accusations, threats of legal action. But faced with a legally binding corporation, sufficient capital to pay off his family's investment, and the united front of several influential ranchers, he'd been forced to accept defeat, at least for the moment. "He'll be back," Hank had warned after Lambert's departure. Men like Victor don't give up easily. But as winter gave way to spring, and spring blossomed towards summer, Lambert's shadow receded from their minds. There was too much life happening, too much joy to be found in each day together. Zara's dream of teaching had begun to take shape. The storage room had indeed been converted into a small schoolroom, and children from neighboring ranches now gathered 3 days a week for lessons. Lily, though younger than the others, proudly served as her mother's helper, already reading at a level that impressed everyone. Hank watched his wife blossom in her new role with immense pride. Marriage had transformed them both, Zara gaining confidence and security, Hank rediscovering laughter and hope. They complemented each other perfectly, her thoughtful nature balancing his occasional impulsiveness, his strength supporting her gentleness. Their love had deepened too, moving beyond the initial rush of emotion into something more enduring. Each night, falling asleep in each other's arms, they marveled at the journey that had brought them together, a journey of loss and renewal, of endings that became beginnings. One warm June evening, as they sat on the porch watching Lily chase fireflies in the gathering dusk, Zara turned to her husband with a mysterious smile. I have news. Hank raised an eyebrow. Good news, I hope? The very best. She took his hand, placing it gently on her still flat stomach. We're going to have a baby. Around Christmas, Dr. Miller thinks. The joy that spread across his face was answer enough, but he gathered her close, burying his face in her hair. A baby, he whispered. Our baby. Are you happy? She asked, though she already knew the answer. Beyond words. He pulled back to look at her, his eyes shining. When shall we tell Lily? She's been asking for a brother or sister since the day after our wedding. Zara laughed. Tomorrow, perhaps. Let's have tonight just for us. They called Lily in soon after, tucking her into the new bedroom that had been added to the house during the spring renovations. As they stood watching their daughter sleep, Hank's arm around Zara's waist, they shared a moment of perfect contentment. Did you ever imagine, he asked softly, when you stepped off that stagecoach last fall, that this would be your life? Never, she admitted. I was just hoping for work, for safety, for a place where Lily and I could be at peace. And now I know that I found not just a place, but a home. Not just work, but purpose. Not just safety, but love. She turned in his arms, rising on tiptoe to kiss him. The kind of love I never expected to find again. As they walked hand in hand toward their bedroom, Zara reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. From a grieving widow seeking only survival to a beloved wife, mother, teacher, and soon, a mother again. The path had not been straight or easy, but every step had led her here, to this man, this family, this ranch that had become the center of their world. Outside, the Montana night settled over Riverbank Ranch, stars appearing one by one in the vast sky. Inside, a family slept in peace, secure in their love for one another, ready to face whatever tomorrow might bring, together.